Okay. John. Did I say right? John? Little did I know what kind of wedding it would be. All I knew was that they had met a Swami and were taking Sanskrit from him as well as attending his small storefront temple on 2nd Avenue. When I met the Swami, he was sitting beside the window in his front room, bathed in sunlight, surrounded by pots of prasadam, which he was distributing to the devotees who were sitting around him against the wall. I was a follower of microbiotics and not so eager for taking this noonday meal. When I entered the room, the Swami said, "Who is this?" And Mukunda said, "This is Janaki's sister, Joan. She has come from Oregon to attend the wedding." Swamiji said, "Oh, where is Oregon?" Mukunda said, "It's 3,000 miles away. Is that far? 3,000 miles? Wow. On the other side of the United States." And he said, "Oh, coming from so far, very nice. And when will the other members of the family will arrive?" Then I said, "I'm the only one who is coming for the wedding, Swamiji." He said, "Never mind. It is very nice that you have come. Please sit down and take some Krishna Prasada." He offered me some dal. A rather moist sabji, yogurt, salad, and chapatis. But because I was devotee of microbiotics, all of this prasadam was very unpalatable to me. Practically speaking, it was sticking in my throat the whole time. But I remember looking over at the radiant and beautiful person who was so eager for me to take this prasadam that he had prepared. So I took it all, but in my mind, I decided this would be the last time I would take this luncheon with the devotees. At any rate, somehow I finished the meal, and Swamiji, who had been looking over at me, said, "You want me? You want more? You want more?" And I said, "No, thank you. I'm so full. It was very nice, but I can't take any more." So finally, the prasadam was finished, and they were all getting up to clean. And Swamiji commented that he wanted to see Mukunda, Janaki, and myself for making preparations for the wedding the next day. So when we were all there sitting in the room with him, the Swamiji reached over into the corner where there was a big pot with crystallized sugar syrup sticking to the outside. I thought, "Oh, this is supposed to be the peace de resistance, but I can't possibly take any more." But he reached his hands into the pot anyway and pulled up a huge round dripping gulab jamuns. I said, oh no, I'm so full I couldn't take any." And he said, "Oh, take." And he made me hold out my hand and take it. Well, by the time I finished the gulab jamun, I was fully convinced that this would be the last time I would ever come there. So when he began explaining how in the Vedic tradition the women's side of the family made lavish arrangement for the wedding, and since I was the only member of the family who had come to assist, I should come the next day and help him make the wedding feast. So the next morning at 9, while Janaki was decorating the room for the fire sacrifice, stringing leaves and flower garlands across the top of the room, I went upstairs to meet Swamiji. When I arrived, he immediately sent me out shopping with a list. 5 or 6 items to purchase. One of those items was not available anywhere in the markets, although I spoke to so many shopkeepers. When I came back, he asked me, you have obtained all the items on the list?" And I said, "Well, everything except for one." He said, "What is that?" I said, "Well, no one knows what tumor is. Is tumor? I don't know what is tumor. Tumor is turmeric." He had me wash my hands and sat me down in his front room on the floor with a 5-pound bag of flour, a pound of butter, and a pitcher of water. And he looked down at me and said, "Can you make a medium soft dough?" I replied, Do you mean a pastry or pie crust or short crust dough or baked greasy dough? What kind of pastry do you want? How how old are you? He said. And I said, I'm 25, Swamiji. He said, how old are you? And I said, I'm 25, Swamiji. You're 25, he said. And you can't make a medium soft dough? It is a custom in India that any young girl from the age of 5 years is very experienced in making this dough. But never mind, I will show you. So he very deftly emptied the bag of the flour and with his fingertips cut the butter into the mixture with a consistency of coarse meal. Then he made a well in the center of the floor, poured in just the right amount of water, and very deftly and expertly kneaded it into the velvety smooth, medium smooth dough. He then brought in a tray of cooked potatoes, mashed them with his fingertips, and began to sprinkle in spices. He showed me how to make and form potato kachoris, which are fried Indian pastries with spiced potatoes filling. From 11 until 5 that afternoon, I sat in one room making potato kachoris. Meanwhile, in the course of that same afternoon, Swamiji brought in 15 other special vegetarian dishes, each one in a large enough quantity for 40 persons, and I had made them single-handedly in his small, narrow kitchen. So I will not read more than that, but it's a very, for me, I felt very inspiring and interesting story. So Joy comes to attend her sister's wedding, and Prabhupada, she saw and she tried the prasadam. Prabhupada insisted and he said, oh my God, this is the last time I'm going to have. Then suddenly when he invited after for the wedding discussion, so he reached out to the part of gulab jamun, and she said, no, 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 no. So Prabhupada said, take one taste. So she took, she said, I'm not going to come back. But then Prabhupada says, now everybody come tomorrow for the preparation for the wedding. So Prabhupada asks her, she goes to see Prabhupada, and Prabhupada gives her the service, how to make dough for the kachoris. And she's been cooking kind of whole day. This is an interesting lesson actually, because the way her life transformed and the way her attitude at the beginning was totally different. Anyway, and
It was rather hot that afternoon, and I was perspiring. I asked Swamiji, may I please have a glass of water? He picked his head around the door and said, go wash your hands. I immediately did so, and when I returned, Swamiji had a glass of water for me. He explained to me that while preparing this food for an offering to the Supreme Lord, one should not think of eating or drinking anything. So, after drinking the glass of water, I went in and washed my hand and sat down. About 2 in the afternoon, I said, Swamiji, may I have a cigarette? And he picked his head around the corner and said, go wash your hands. So I did. And when I came back, he explained to me the four rules of Krishna consciousness. I continued to make the kachoris, and around 3:30, 4 o'clock, it was extremely warm in the room, and as Swamiji was bringing in one of his preparation, I was wiping my arm and hand across my forehead. He looked down at me and said, please go and wash your hands. Again, I did so, and upon returning, he had a moistened paper towel for me. He explained that cooking for Krishna required certain standard of cleanliness and purity that were different than the ones I was accustomed to. About the 30 people attended. The decorations were similar to the ones for the initiation a few days before, except that they were more festive and the feast was more lavish. Swamiji's front room was decorated with pine boughs and leaves, and flowers were strung overhead from one side of the room to the other. Some of the new initiates came, their large red beads around their necks. They had taken vows now, 16 rounds a day, and they chanted on their beads just as Swamiji had shown them. And they happily, though self consciously, called one another by their new spiritual names.
So now her experience is continuous that she asked for the glass of water and she didn't know, just she probably thought I'll just drink the water. She doesn't know that when you're preparing for the Krishna, you don't drink like that way, just like that. I hope for the deity worship there's a lot of regulations when you're serving the temple. It's not like any other place. So even for drinking, Prabhupada asked, go and wash your hand like this, because that's the purity level we had in the Vedic system. You don't just drink and do your work there. So you have to go out and drink and wash your hand again and come. So she was surprised that every time I asked for something, he asked me to wash my hand. And interestingly, she asked for the smoke cigarette also. How much Prabhupada had patience? He didn't say that don't do it. I said, okay, go and then again wash your hand and come like that. So anyway, so the looks like room is decorated. 30 people, about 30 people attended the wedding. Looks like 30 people is an interesting thing. Very small number, but Prabhupada prepared a nice elaborate feast. And they are fortunate, Mukund and Janaki, Mata Mukund and Janaki, very fortunate. Prabhupada personally prepared everything actually for them. Anyway, so AJ, please.
Is it about 30 people or the next one down?
Yeah, this one, Janaki.
Okay. Janaki said, Swamiji said that I should wear a sari at my wedding, and he said it should be made of silk. I asked him what color. He said red. So
You're there?
sorry, it's my first day. So Mukunda bought me an absolutely elegant sari and some very nice jewelry. The Swami's friends were used to seeing Janaki, as she always came with Mukunda, but usually she wore no makeup and dressed in very plain clothes. They were astounded and somewhat embarrassed to see her enter wearing jewelry, makeup, and a bright red sari. The bride's hair was up and braided, decorated with an oval silver filigree hair ornament. She wore heavy silver earrings, which Mukunda had purchased from an expensive Indian import shop on Fifth Avenue, and silver bracelets. Prabhupada directed Mukunda and Janaki to sit opposite him on the other side of the sacrificial fire arena. And just as at the initiation, he lit the incense and instructed them in the purification by water, recited the purification mantra, and then began to speak. He explained about the relationship between man and wife in Krishna consciousness, and how they should serve each other and how they should serve Krishna. Prabhupada then asked Janaki's sister to present her formally to Mukunda as his wife. Mukunda then repeated after Swamiji, I accept Janaki as my wife, and I shall take charge of her throughout both of our lives. We shall live together peacefully in Krishna consciousness, and there will never be any separation. And then Prabhupada turned to Janaki. Will you accept Sriman Mukunda Dasa Brahmachari as your life's companion? Will you serve him always and help him execute his Krishna consciousness activities? And then Janaki replied, yes, I accept Mukunda as my husband throughout my life. There shall never be any separation between us, either in happiness or distress. I shall serve him always, and we shall live together peacefully in Krishna consciousness. No one knew anything of what was going on except Swamiji. He led the chanting. He gave the lines for the bride and groom to exchange. He told them where to sit and what to do. He, in fact, had told them to get married. He had also cooked the elaborate feast that was waiting in the kitchen for the completion of the ceremony. Prabhupada asked Mukunda and Janaki to exchange their flower garlands, and after that to exchange sitting places. He then asked Mukunda to rub some vermilion down the part in Janaki's hair and then to cover her head with her sari. Next came the fire sacrifice and finally the feast.
Okay. Sure.
So it's just kind of a recap of the marriage ceremony that they that Prabhupada oversaw for this couple, and they just initially they were, Swamiji's friends were surprised to see Janaki, all dolled up, right, with her hair done and wearing nice jewelry and makeup and things like that. But after that, they talked through the different parts of the ceremony that he conducted. The purification and the mantras and the exchanging of the vows, and talking, part of the vow being, you are to help him execute his duties in Krishna consciousness, and help him, help him execute his Krishna conscious activities, and you will always live together with no separation in Krishna consciousness. So I thought that was nice. So. And everybody was kind of clueless as to what was happening. Only Prabhupada knew the ritual, I guess, and what was going on, and he organized the whole thing right down to telling the couple to get married in the first place. So everybody was just kind of along for the ride, it sounds like.
Well, they didn't know what is marriage, first of all. Actually, I'm telling you, that's the fact, and people don't know what is the marriage now also. And they do not know what is the commitment level for the marriage. They do not know what is the purpose of marriage. They do not know how to have the marriage. Now also the same situation. I hope you agree. So nowadays it's very hard. People do not know. That's why Prabhupada is coming in. He said that no separation. A lifetime in both happiness and distress, serving and together. That's the commitment. And purpose of marriage is you keep Krishna at the center, Krishna consciousness. So they didn't understand at all because they didn't know, but at least they let Prabhupada drive everything. That's a good thing. Second, Prabhu?
The special feature of the wedding was the big feast. It turned out to be quite a social success. The guests ate enthusiastically, asked for more, and raved about the sensational taste. Prabhupada's followers, who were accustomed to the simply daily fare of rice, dal, sabji, and chapatis, found the feast intoxicating and ate as much as they could get. Many of Mukunda's friends were macrobiotic followers, and at first they fastidiously avoided all the sweets, but gradually the enthusiasm of the others wore down their resistance, and they became captivated by the Swami's expert cooking. God, he is a good cook, said Janaki. Bruce, who had missed the first initiation, was seeing the Vedic fire sacrifice and tasting the Swami's kachauris for the first time. He resolved on the spot to dedicate himself to Krishna consciousness and become one of the Swamiji's disciples as soon as possible. Almost all the visitors personally approached Swamiji to thank him and congratulate him. He was happy and said it was all Krishna's blessings, Krishna's grace. After the ceremony, Mukunda and his wife entertained many of the devotees and guests in their apartment. The evening had put everyone in high spirits, and Hayagriva was reciting poetry. Then someone turned on the television to catch the scheduled interview with Allen Ginsberg, the poet, and much to everyone's happiness, Allen began playing harmonium and chanting Hare Krishna. He even said there was a Swami on the Lower East Side who was teaching this mantra yoga. Krishna consciousness was new and unheard of. Yet now the devotees were seeing a famous celebrity perform kirtana on television. The whole evening seemed auspicious. Back at his apartment, Prabhupada, along with a few helpers, cleaned up after the ceremony. He was satisfied. He was introducing some of the major elements of his Krishna consciousness mission. He had initiated disciples, he had married them, and he had feasted the public with Krishna Prasadam. If I had the means, he told his followers, I could hold a major festival like this every day. So here, after the wedding ceremony, there was a big feast, and all the guests who attended, they liked it, and they were asking for more. Like basically, some of the people who were there coming to the Prabhupada's program, they were having their daily like rice, dal, sabji, and chapatis. But today, they had a lot more varieties in the feast, and they all ate as much as they can. Many of Mukunda's and Janaki's friends were all macrobiotic and followers. They would not eat at first, but later on they broke down with seeing the enthusiasm of the others. And then they also ate and appreciated Prabhupada's cooking. Bruce, he missed the first initiation, and when he saw the whole ceremony, he was inspired and he resolved to dedicate himself to Krishna consciousness and become Swami's disciple. And after the program, basically everyone went back to their homes. There were few people who helped Prabhupada clean up the apartment, and then Allen Ginsberg was on television, and he was basically playing the Hare Krishna, chanting Hare Krishna Maha Mantra and playing his harmonium. So it was a big celebrity who was actually performing kirtan on television, and he also spoke about Prabhupada, saying that this mantra yoga is being taught on the Lower East Side. And Prabhupada basically said to his disciples that Prabhupada was satisfied. He did not say to anyone that he had he's seeing some of the success of the Krishna consciousness mission, which is slowly getting started. He had initiated disciples, married a couple, and then he having a big feast with Krishna Prasadam. And he was telling his followers that he could do this every day if he had the means.
Very well. That's interesting. Bruce got attracted by seeing fire sacrifice and eating kachoris.
I was going to say, I don't know if people know that, because it's not really, I don't think too many people do it anymore, but a macrobiotic diet.
I was about to ask you about that. What is that?
It's vegan. It's a vegan diet, so no dairy, but also no sweets, no sugar. So that's why when he was trying to get her to eat gulab jamun, which is cream and sugar. So right, it's bread and cream and sugar. So it's about the worst thing you can eat on a macrobiotic diet.
So veganism was there that time also?
It was, yeah. And then this took it a step further by adding the restriction of sweets as well, of sugar, refined sugars. So
that's good to know. At least some veganism was this. Basically, there are some people who are not, were in one sense vegetarians those days.
Yeah. I mean, there was a lot of vegetarians. I don't know how popular vegan was, but yeah.
There were a lot of vegetarians on that time?
I think a lot of hippies were. But they were also, I think a lot of hippies would also eat anything they could afford. But I think
I heard they became vegetarian after Prabhupada came. Actually, they didn't know what is the cooking at all.
Oh, maybe.
Yeah, it's Prabhupada who actually brought the vegetarian revolution to America. That, as far as I know, so a lot of cookbooks, a lot of experiences of because the devotees on that time, they are sharing. It was people had no idea what is vegetarian means. Ravindra Swapru was sharing much. So I mean, now also you see many people do not know what is vegetarian means. They say, what do you eat? So when they get first time to eat all these varieties, plant-based, dal, so many types of lentils, everything, they just trying to see what is your thought. But I thought there's not much vegetarianism was not there before. But it's good to know that macrobiotic.
Macrobiotic. Yep.
Macrobiotic is vegan. It's kind of vegan diet. Okay, that's good. Thank you. I was about to ask you actually on that. Yeah, Josna Mataji, let me read this one. This chapter 20 now, stay high forever. So Prabhupada, everybody got, interestingly, they didn't have enough experience. Now after tasting the prasadam in Krishna consciousness during ceremony, they got inspired very much. And now everybody has some kind of experience, wedding, initiation, and prasadam, community kind of they have. Stay high forever. But while this was going on, an old man, 1 year passed, his allotted three score and 10, wandered into New York's East Village and set about to prove to the world that he knew where God could be found. What is 3 score and 10? Do you know?
Yeah, a score is 20 years. So 3 score is
Oh,
60.
a score is 20 years. Okay, so
Yeah,
70.
so 70 years old.
70 exactly. Thank you. I didn't know what is that meaning.
It's
In,
not used really. It's very dated.
in only 3 months, the man Swami A.C. Bhaktivedanta succeeded in convincing the world's tough, toughest audience: bohemians, acid heads, potheads, and hippies, that we knew the way to God. That he knew the way to God. Turn off, sing out, and fall in. This new brand of holy man, with all due deference to Dr. Leary, has come forth with a brand of consciousness expansion that's sweeter than acid, cheaper than pot, and non-burstable by fudge. How is it all this possible? Through Krishna, the Swami says, from the East Village, other October 1966. I don't know if Josna Mata is there or not.
He's outside, Prabhu, with someone.
Yeah, Prasanthi, please.
Prabhupada's health was good that summer and fall, or so it seemed. He worked long and hard, and except for 4 hours of rest at night, he was always active. He would speak intensely on, never tiring, and his voice was strong. His smiles were strong and charming, his singing voice loud and melodious. During Kirtana, he would thump Bengali mridanga rhythms on his bongo drum, sometimes for an hour. He ate heartily of rice, dal, chapatis, and vegetables with ghee. His face was full and his belly pro- protuberant. Sometimes, in a light mood, he would drum his he would drum with 2 fingers on his belly and say that the resonance affirmed his good health. His golden color had the radiance of and well-being, youth and well-being preserved by 70 years of healthy, non-restrictive habits. When he smiled, virility and vitality came on so strong as to embarrass a faded, dissolute New Yorker. In many ways, he was not at all like an old man, and his new followers completely accepted his active youthfulness as a part of the wonder of Swamiji. Just as though, just as they had come to accept the wonder of the chanting and the wonder of Krishna, Swamiji wasn't an ordinary man. He was spiritual. He could do anything. None of his followers dared advise him to slow down, nor did it ever really occur to them that he needed such protection. They were busy just trying to keep up with him. During the 2 months at 26 Second Avenue, he had achieved what had formerly been only a dream. He now had the temple, a duly registered society, full freedom to preach, and a band of initiated disciples. When a god brother had written asking him how he would manage a temple in New York, Prabhupada had said that he would need men from India, but that he might find an American or two who could help. That had been last winter. Now Krishna had put him in a different situation. He had received no help from his god brothers, no big donations from Indian business magnates, and no assistance from the Indian government. But he was finding success in a different way. These are happy days, he said. He had struggled alone for a year, but then Krishna sent me men and money. So this explains about Prabhupada's activeness and his intense, hardworking nature and spiritual mood. His health seemed good in that summer and fall. He was working all the time. He is very active. He only takes rest for 4 hours a day and intensely speaks, never tiring. His voice is always strong. He seemed yeah, his smile is strong and charming, and voice very melodious. In Kirtana, he would thump Bengali mridanga rhythms on his bongo drum, and he will continue that for an hour. He eats heartily, and and there is his vitality came on so strong. The regular New Yorkers were trying to keep up with the old man who is 70 years old, but he is always active like a young person and very spiritual. Um, and even his followers also never advised him to slow down because he is 70 years old. They never dared to do that, and they are always busy trying to keep up with him. And and it also talks about the changes that happened. 1 year ago, he was asking help to everybody for donations and also for help. He asked his god brothers to send some men so that he can build a temple here. But in spite of all those challenges, he was able to preach Krishna consciousness and successfully initiate people in New York, and they were happy days. And Krishna sent the men and money.
At the beginning, he was thinking his plan how will you manage that I will get some people from India and I'll get local, but Krishna made it happen that he everything he manifested here. Nipa,
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
yeah, please read.
Yes, these were happy days for Prabhupada, but his happiness was not like the happiness of old men's sunset years as he fades into the dim comforts of retirement. His was the happiness of youth, a time of blossoming, of new powers, a time when future hopes expand without limit. He was 71 years old, but in ambition, he was a courageous youth. He was like a young giant just beginning to grow. He was happy because his preaching was taking hold, just as Lord Chaitanya had been happy when he had traveled alone to South India spreading the chanting of Hare Krishna. Prabhupada's happiness was that of a selfless servant of Krishna, to whom Krishna was sending candidates for devotional life. He was happy to place the seed of devotion within their hearts and to train them in chanting Hare Krishna, hearing about Krishna and working to spread Krishna consciousness. Prabhupada continued to accelerate. After the first initiations and the first marriage, he was eager for the next step. He was pleased by what he had, but he wanted to do more. It was the greed of the Vaishnava, not a greed to have sense gratification, but to take more and more for Krishna. He would go in like a needle and come out like a plough. That is to say, from a small, seemingly insignificant beginning, he would expand his movement to tremendous proportions. At least that was his desire. He was not content with his newfound success and security at 26 Second Avenue, but was yearning to increase ISKCON as far as possible. This had always been his vision. He had written into the ISKCON Charter to achieve real unity and peace in the world, within the members and humanity at large. So here it explains how Prabhupada was happy, and it describes that his happiness was not like a traditional old man sunset years and fades into the comforts of retirement. His happiness has been described as the happiness of youth and blossoming, in contradictory to the people at his age. He was 71 years old, but his ambitions was courageous like a youth. He was a youth giant who was just actually beginning to grow for that age. He was happy to preach, taking a hold, like Lord Chaitanya had traveled to South India spreading Hare Krishna movement. Prabhupada's was like happiness was like a selfless servant to Lord Krishna and sending candidates for devotional life. Yeah, he was happy to place the seed of devotion in many hearts and chanting Hare Krishna and hearing and spreading the work of Krishna consciousness. And Prabhupada kept progressing in that. After his first initiation and first marriage, he was so eager to progress and go to the next step. And it was agreed, it was the greed of Vaishnava, not like a sense of gratification, but more wanting of Krishna. he was also compared to like a needle and come out like a plow. Like he started seemingly insignificant beginning and expand the movement very tremendously. And that was his desire. He was not content with the success at the 26th Avenue, but he was trying to yearn to increase ISKCON as far as much possible for him. He had a vision and he had written into ISKCON charter also to achieve real unity and peace in the world within the members and humanity at large.
Yes, thank you. Very nice. Yeah, Vijayanand Prabhu.
Swamiji gathered his group together. He knew that once they tried it, they would love it. But it would only happen if he personally went with them. Washington Square Park was only half a mile away, maybe a little more. Ravindra Swarupa. He never made a secret of what he was doing. He used to say, I want everybody to know what we are doing. And one day, D-Day came. He said, we are going to chant in Washington Square Park. Everybody was scared. You just don't go into a park and chant. It seemed like a weird thing to do. But he assured us, saying, you won't be afraid when you start chanting. Krishna will help you. And so we trudged down to Washington Square Park and we were very upset about it. Up until that time, we weren't exposing ourselves. I was upset about it. And I know that several other people were to be making a public figure of yourself. With Prabhupada leading, they set out on that fair Sunday morning, walking the city blocks from 2nd Avenue to Washington Square in the heart of Greenwich Village. And the way he looked, just by walking, he created a sensation. None of the boys had shaved heads or robes, but because of Swamiji with his saffron robes, his white pointy shoes, and his shaven head held high, people were astonished. It wasn't like when he would go out alone. That brought nothing more than an occasional second glance. But today, with a group of young men hurrying to keep up with him as he headed through the city streets, obviously about to do something, he caused a stir. Tough guys and kids called out names, and others laughed and made sounds. A year ago in Butler, the Agarwals had been sure that Prabhupada had not come to America for followers. He did not want to make any waves, Sally had thought, but now he was making waves. Walking through the New York City streets, headed for the first public chanting in America, followed by his first disciples. So this explains the next like stage of elevating his associates, his followers. So Prabhupada, one day he told like everyone. We will go as a group and do the chanting in the Washington Square Park. And on hearing this, like everybody was scared because they had never thought of going to park and do the chanting, and they thought like it's very weird. But Prabhupada assured them that no need to be afraid, and if you start chanting, like Krishna will help you. So everyone started moving to the Washington Square Park, which was like not much far away, like half a mile or more. But everyone were very upset because all those disciples did this day. They never did any public appearance, and everything they did only in the matchless gift store actually, and none of them did go outside in a public. So they were like very uncomfortable and they were not happy. But that particular day came, and in one fair Sunday morning, like they started walking from the 2nd Avenue to the Washington Square Park, and just by walking, it created a sensation. And the reason being like none of the boys had like shaven heads, and they were like still having their own the original appearance, but only it was like Swamiji. He had like wearing saffron robes and with pointy shoes and shaven head. So he was walking in the front and his disciples was following, but it was not the same type of walk which he had earlier, where people just had a like an occasional second glance, and they just did not mind it. But today, like it was the scene was set like in a different way, where where the Swamiji was walking, and like a group of young men were like hurrying to keep up with his pace, and like they're walking, and it created like a stir, and a lot of people looked at them, and they were laughing, and they made sounds. And it was like given an example like a year ago when Prabhupada landed in the Butler in the first time in US in the Butler. The first host was like the Agarwals, and they were sure that he did not came for like creating followers, and he did not want to make any waves also. But now he was really making the waves. And he was taking people for the public chanting in America, but with these disciples, first disciples.
Thank you. So this is the first chanting Harinam in America, and you see, people never thought, because even though it's a different culture, everything, they didn't reveal themselves much. There are a lot of hesitations in the heart, you can see. Now Prabhupada insists, says, let's propose that let's go for Square Park, and everybody's feeling like some kind of, when this happens, when you first time, you really become so much of nervous, and sometimes can be embarrassing. And because we started in Delaware, first time when we had Harinam, we didn't know how to do, but at least we have done in the past in Philadelphia. Nothing new, but for all the American, kids, that time is first time. So there's a lot of hesitation. They didn't know what it is, and they feel a little weird. And happened that it's first time experience to people. They're wondering what's happening. They should call for names and everything. But looks like there's going to be some miracles are going to happen now. Pranatu.
Prabhu, I'm just hearing today, Prabhu.
Okay.
Thanks.
Yeah. In the park, there were hundreds of people milling about. Stylish, decadent, Greenwich villagers, visitors from other boroughs, tourists from other states and other lands, an amalgam of faces, nationalities, ages, and interests. As usual, someone was playing his guitar by the fountain. Boys and girls were sitting together and kissing. Some were throwing frisbees. Some were playing drums or flutes and or other instruments. And some were walking their dogs, talking, watching everything, wandering around. And it was a typical day in the village. Prabhupada went to a patch of lawn where despite a small sign that read "Keep off the grass," many people were lounging. He sat down, and one by one his followers sat beside him. He took out his brass and hand cymbals and sang the Mahamantra. And his disciples responded awkwardly at first, then stronger. It wasn't as bad as they thought it would be. Jagannath was sharing his experiences. It was a marvelous thing, a marvelous experience, and that Swamiji brought up on me. Because it opened me up a great deal, and I overcome a certain shyness. The first time I chant out in the middle of everything. So this is sharing. Prabhupada helped them to come out of their, shortcomings, anarthas, shyness. A curious crowd gathered to watch, though no one joined in. Within a few minutes, two policemen moved in through the crowd. Who is in charge here? An officer asked roughly. The boys looked towards Prabhupada. Didn't you see the sign? An officer asked. Swamiji furrowed his brow and turned his eyes towards the sign. He got up and walked to the uncomfortably warm pavement and sat down again. And his followers struggled after to sit around him. Prabhupada continued the chanting for half an hour, and the crowd stood listening. A guru in America had never gone onto the streets before and sung the names of God. After Kirtan, he asked for a copy of the Srimad Bhagavatam and had Hayagribha read aloud from the preface. With clear articulation, Hayagribha read, Disparity in the human society is due to the basic principle of godless civilization. There is God, the Almighty One, from whom everything emanates, by whom everything is maintained, and in whom everything is merged at rest. The crowd was still. Afterward, the Swami and his followers walked back to the storefront, feeling elated and victorious. They had broken the American silence. Haribol. It is a big step. Doing something, coming to a foreign country, foreign culture, knowing nothing, so boldly making this group and going to the outside publicly. It's not a very small thing, especially in America. Everything is observed, and so many criticisms can come. People feel they think it's weird, but somehow managed the park, and the park, everybody had their daily routine what they saw is unusual, and Prabhupada chanted with his kartals, and Hayagriva read from from Srimad Bhagavatam about the message of God. That's bold step actually Prabhupada had taken, and they had broken the American silence. That's why his again in Nirbhisesa Sunyavadi Paschatya Desatarine, another weapon for him to remove the voidness within from the Americans' life. Anyway, AJ, please read.
Allen Ginsberg lived nearby on 10th Street. One day he received a peculiar invitation in the mail. Practice the transcendental sound vibration. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. This chanting will cleanse the dust from the mirror of the mind. International Society of Krishna Consciousness, meetings at 7 a.m. daily, Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays at 7 p.m. You are cordially invited to come and bring your friends. Swamiji had asked the boys to distribute it around the neighborhood. One evening, soon after he received the invitation, Allen Ginsberg and his roommate, Peter Orlovsky, arrived at the storefront in a Volkswagen minibus. Allen had been captivated by the Hare Krishna mantra several years before, when he had first encountered it at Kumbh Mela Festival in Allahabad, India, and he had been chanting it often ever since. The devotees were impressed to see the world-famous author of How and leading figure of the Beat generation enter their humble storefront. His advocacy of free sex, marijuana, and LSD, his claims of drug-induced visions of spirituality in everyday sights, his political ideas, his exploration of insanity, revolt, and nakedness, and his attempts to create a harmony of like-minded souls, all were influential on the minds of American young people, especially those living on the Lower East Side. Although by middle-class standards he was scandalous and disheveled, he was in his own right a figure of worldly repute, more so than anyone who had ever come to the storefront before. Allen Ginsberg. Bhaktivedanta seemed to have no friends in America, but it was alone, totally alone, and gone somewhat like a lone hippie to the nearest refuge, the place where it was cheap enough to rent. So, yeah, the Prabhupada's disciples began passing out, or did you want me to keep going?
You can read this one also, rest of the Allen Ginsberg.
Okay. There were a few people sitting cross-legged on the floor. I think most of them were Lower East Side hippies who had just wandered in off the street with beards and a curiosity and inquisitiveness and a respect for spiritual presentation of some kind. Some of them were sitting with the glazed eyes, but most of them were just like gentle folk, bearded, hip, and curious. They were refugees from the middle class in the Lower East Side, looking exactly like the street sadhus in India. It was very similar, that phase in American underground history. And I liked immediately the idea that Swami Bhaktivedanta had chosen the Lower East Side of New York for his practice. He had gone to the lower depths. He had gone to a spot more like the side streets of Calcutta than any other place. So Prabhupada's disciples were handing out invitations, sending invitations around the Lower East Side, letting people know that, when the meetings were and inviting them to come chant and listen to Prabhupada speak. And so Allen Ginsberg received one of those invitations, and having been familiar with chanting the Maha Mantra from when he was in Allahabad, India previously. He said, you know what, I'm gonna go. And then it gets into a little bit about his credentials, right? He doesn't, on the surface, he doesn't seem like a person you would go to learn about, who would be into Krishna consciousness. He was very big in promoting drugs at the time. He was, I don't know, I believe he was either socialist or anarchist, I don't recall, but very, very political minded, and but was relatively famous. Had a very decent amount of fame attached to his name at that point. So then, Ginsburg goes through and he talks about, what he encountered when he first went to the Lower East Side to chant with Krishna, to chant with Prabhupada. And he talks about how, I think that the best line in this one is the last one here, the last two. He's like, he likes that Prabhupada had chosen the Lower East Side because it's so, he calls it the lower depths, right? It's not a great area. It's a rough spot to go. Essentially he searched out somewhere, he says, like the side streets, more like the side streets of Calcutta than any other place in America. I've never been to Calcutta, so I don't know how true that is, but Ginsburg seems to think that's the case.
So here, Allen Ginsberg was advocating all this before, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it seems to create harmony of likely-minded souls, all will influence love the minds of American young people, especially those living in the lowest. So I'm just a little curious on. He's one of the leader of this hippie in one sense.
Yeah, the hippie, more the beatniks, which were kind of the precursor to the hippies, but that same attitude. He was just
very influential. Yeah, he's influenced. Yeah.
Very, yep.
Still nice. Yes, I can go.
Alan and Peter had come for the kirtan, but it wasn't quite time. Prabhupada hadn't come down. They presented a new harmonium to the devotees. It is for the kirtanas, said Alan. A little donation. Alan stood at the entrance to the storefront talking with Hayagriva, telling him how he had been chanting the Hare Krishna around the world at peace marches, poetry readings, a procession in Prague, a writers' union in Moscow. Secular kirtan, said Alan, but Hare Krishna nonetheless. Then Prabhupada entered. Alan and Peter sat with the congregation and joined in the kirtan. Alan played harmonium. Alan, I was astounded that he had come with the chanting, because it seemed like a reinforcement from India. I had been running around singing Hare Krishna, but had never understood exactly why or what it meant. But I was surprised to see that he had a different melody, because I thought the melody I knew was the melody, the universal melody. I had gotten so used to my melody that actually the biggest difference I had with him was over the tune, because I had solidified it in my mind for years, and to hear another tune actually blew my mind. After the lecture, Alan came forward to meet Prabhupada, who was still sitting on his dais. Alan offered his respects with folded palms and touched Prabhupada's feet, and Prabhupada reciprocated by nodding his head and folding his palms. They talked together briefly, and then Prabhupada returned to his apartment. Alan mentioned to Hayagriva that he would like to come by again and talk more with Prabhupada. So Hayagriva invited him to come the next day and stay for lunch prasadam. So here, Alan and Peter, they came for the kirtan. Prabhupada was not there. He hasn't come down then. And he was speaking with Hayagriva, telling him that he has been chanting Hare Krishna at multiple places throughout the world. But it was the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra itself. And Prabhupada entered, and Alan sat down with the congregation, and he played harmonium while joining the kirtan. So Alan was surprised that the melody that Prabhupada sang was a little bit different than the melody that he has been accustomed to. So he said that was it was the main difference he probably had with Prabhupada was over the tune. And then After the lecture, Alan came forward, offered his obeisances to Prabhupada, and Prabhupada reciprocated. They talked briefly, and Prabhupada returned. Alan mentioned to Hayagriva that he would like to come by, and Hayagriva invited him to come the next day and stay for lunch prasad.
That's so nice. He offered a new harmonium, and interesting. What is Krishna's arrangement? Okay. Prasanthi?
Don't you think Swamiji is a little too esoteric for New York? Ellen asked. Hayagriva thought maybe, he replied. Hayagriva then asked Ellen to help the Swami. Since his visa would soon expire, he had entered the country with a visa for a 2-month stay, and he had been extending his visa for 2 more months again and again. This had gone on for 1 year, but the last time he had applied for an extension, he had been refused. We need an immigration lawyer, said Hayagriva. I'll donate to that, Ellen assured him. The next morning, Allen Ginsberg came by with a check and another harmonium. Up in Prabhupada's apartment, he demonstrated his melody for chanting Hare Krishna, and then he and Prabhupada talked. Allen, I was a little shy with him because I didn't know where he was coming from. I had that harmonium I wanted to donate, and I had a little money. I thought it was great now that he was here to expound on the Hare Krishna mantra. That would sort of justify my singing. I knew what I was doing, but I didn't have any theological background to satisfy further inquiries. And here was someone who did. So I thought that was absolutely great. Now I could go around singing Hare Krishna, and if anybody wanted to know what it was, I could just send them to Swami Bhaktivedanta to find out. If anyone wanted to know the technical intricacies and the ultimate history, I would send them to him. He explained to me about his own teacher and about Chaitanya and the lineage going back. His head was filled with so many things and what he was doing. He was already working on his translations. He always seemed to be sitting there just day after day and night after night, and I think he had 1 or 2 people helping him. Allen Ginsberg came back the other day. Hayagriva asked him if he would help Swami with the visa issue they were having. He came for 2 months and he kept on extending it again and again for 2 months. So last time he asked, he has been refused, so he has to get an immigration lawyer. And Alan assured him that he will spend money for that. And the next morning he came up with a harmonium and a check, and he was in the Prabhupada's apartment. He was a little shy before because he doesn't know much about Prabhupada, where he is coming from, and he wanted to give the harmonium and some little money. He is always singing Hare Krishna mantra all around the world in his assemblies, but he doesn't have any theological background. Now there is a Swami who knows about the background, and he can send anybody who asks questions to Swami Bhaktivedanta to find out. He doesn't have the technical intricacies or the history. Now, after talking to Prabhupada, he knew about the disciplic succession, about his own teacher, and also about Lord Chaitanya and the lineage going back. And he also saw that Prabhupada was working on his translations all the time, day after day, and day and night he was working on that. And there are 1 or 2 people helping him.
Nipa?
Yes,
Please read.
Prabhupada,
Hmm.
Prabhupada was very cordial. Prabhupada was very cordial with Alan, quoting a passage from Bhagavad Gita where Krishna says that whatever a great man does, others will follow. He requested Alan to continue chanting Hare Krishna at every opportunity so that others would follow his example. He told about Lord Chaitanya's organizing the first civil disobedience movement in India, leading a Sankirtanam protest march against the Muslim ruler. Alan was fascinated. He enjoyed talking with the Swami, but they had their differences. When Alan expressed his admiration for a well-known Bengali holy man, Prabhupada said that the holy man was bogus. Alan was shocked. He had never before heard a Swami severely criticize another's practice. Prabhupada explained on the basis of Vedic evidence the reasoning behind his criticism, and Allen admitted that he had naively thought that all holy men were 100% holy. But now he decided that he should not simply accept a sadhu, including Prabhupada, on blind faith. He decided to see Prabhupada in a more severe critical light. Alan, I had a very superstitious attitude of respect, which probably was an idiot sense of mentality. And so Swami Bhaktivedanta's teaching was very good to make me question that. It also made me question him and not take him for granted. Alan described a divine vision he had had in which William Blake had appeared to him in sound and in which he had understood the oneness of all things. A sadhu in Vrindavana had told Alan that this meant that William Blake was his guru. But to Prabhupada, this made no sense. Should I continue? So,
Explain now. Yeah.
it here it describes that Prabhupada was actually cordial with Alan, and he uh, quoted a passage from Bhagavad Gita where Krishna says that what a great man does, basically others will follow him. So he requested Alan to keep chanting Hare Krishna at every opportunity, so he can set an example for others. He told about Lord Chaitanya's also organizing the first civil disobedience movement in India, leading to a Sankirtana protest march against the Muslim ruler. Alan got fascinated and enjoyed the same talking with Swami. But Alan and Swamiji had their differences. Alan, though expired, Alan had expressed his admiration for a well-known Bengali holy man, and Prabhupada said that the holy man was bogus. And Alan got shocked over the criticism, considering how can Prabhupada criticize someone else's practice. Prabhupada then went on to explain on the basis of Vedic evidence why he is criticizing. And Alan admitted that he naively thought that all holy men were 100% holy. But now he also doubted, and he said he should not simply accept a sadhu, including Prabhupada, on a blind faith and should have a more critical light and severe light on it. Alan, uh, he had a very superstitious attitude of respect, which probably was an idiot sense of mentality. So Swami Bhakti Vedanta's teaching was very good. That made him question. It made him question not to take him for granted. Allen described a divine vision in which he says about William Blake had appeared to him in his sound and understand the oneness of things. A sadhu in Vrindavan also told Allen that William Blake had was his guru, but to Prabhupada this made no sense.
Hmm. Very nice. One more person we can read. Yeah, Vijayananto, you please do.
Alan, the main thing above and beyond all our differences was an aroma of sweetness that he had, a personal, selfless sweetnesses like total devotion. And that was that always conquered me. Whatever intellectual questions or doubts I had, or even cynical views of ego, in his presence there was a kind of personal charm coming from dedication that conquered all our conflicts. Even though I did not agree with him, I always liked to be with him. Alan agreed at Prabhupada's request to chant more and to try to give up smoking. Do you really intend to make these American boys into Vaishnavas? Alan asked. Yes, Prabhupada replied happily. and I will make them all Brahmanas. Alan left a $200 check to help cover the legal expenses for extending the Swami's visa and wished him good luck. Brahmanas. Alan did not see how such a transformation could be possible.
Nice. You can summarize.
Okay. Like on these conversations, like with Alan and Prabhupada, like there were like lot of conflicts between both of them with their ideas. But still, Alan liked the time and the association with Prabhupada because he always conquered him, and what are the questions and the doubts he had, it was answered to him. So he like agreed to stay with him and spend time with him, even though they had conflicts. And he also told that as per Prabhupada's request, like he will chant more and he will try to give up smoking. And when Alan asked if Prabhupada can convert these American boys into Vaishnavas, and Prabhupada replied that surely he will do it. However, Alan was wondering like how that kind of transformation is possible, and also in a situation to help Prabhupada, like Alan like sponsored like $200 check to help the legal expenses for extending Swami's visa so that he can stay further, and wished him good luck.
Interesting. What is position of Prabhupada and what is position of Alan Ginsberg? And unfortunately, because of Maya, illusory energy, people think that we always try to compare who is better. I'm better. He's better. He has no idea Prabhupada's position, but somehow he's good. He took association. He's a little positive to him and helped him. Donated harmonium, gave $200 check, and at least he has some idea. At least he was not blind. Alan Ginsberg, Brahmanas. Any more reflections from today's reading? We have 3 minutes. We did good amount of reading. Stay high forever.
We read about the marriage ceremony between Mukunda Prabhu and Janaki Mataji.
Yes. And John shared her experiences with Prabhupada and his cooking, and then helping him. Then everyone loved the feast. So Prabhupada how guided her in how to cook. And this chapter is still high forever.
They had the first Nam Sankirtan.
Yes.
In the Washington Square Park. That is the same park where the Rath Yatra ends, right, Prabhu?
Yeah. That's the. You say Washington Square Park. It said that.
Yeah.
Oh. Tompkins Square. I don't know how it says. It's Tompkins Square Park where Prabhupada did it. Tompkins Square Park. Do you know, Ajay, the Tompkins Square Park?
Tompkins Square Park is around the corner from Matchell's Gifts, I believe.
Around the corner of it?
From the original storefront from Matchell's Gifts.
Oh, is it? Yeah, that's there. There's a memory there. And Washington Square Park also has. Yeah, that's where we do the Rath Yatra. Actually, you're right.
Right, that's where the Hare Krishna tree is, or the Prabhupada tree is. That
yes, yes. In Tompkins Square Park is the Prabhupada tree, right?
Yep.
Yes, right. But here it says that they went to Washington Square Park first, Kirtan. Isn't it? Isn't it? We read Washington Square Park.
Yeah, that's what they said. Yep. Yeah.
So, was he living? Washington Square Park was close to. I hope it's not a mistake, though. Was Washington Square Park is close to 26th Second Avenue?
No, Prabhu. I think if I remember correctly, it was saying like it was more than a half a mile or more they went walking, then only they reached. I think it might not be that much close, I believe.
Half a mile is not very much distance.
Mm-hmm.
Half a mile is not very much distance. 22nd Avenue, from 22nd Avenue, I need to figure out this. I'll talk to Vishnu Prabhu and see why it says like this, because Washington Square Park is different, but Prabhupada's memory is the tree is in Tompkins Square Park.
So it's about, it looks like it's a half a mile away. Washington Square Park is a half mile away from the storefront, from Matchless Gifts.
Oh, is it? Oh, okay. You looked into it?
I Google mapped it.
You have all answers. Okay, good. You found her. So basically they did. Okay, they went to Washington Square Park. Then probably later they went to the Tompkins Square Park. Probably. So, very nice. Now another thing is Allen Ginsberg. He finds the invitation and he comes, visits with Peter, and harmonium. I don't know from where he got harmonium. Harmonium is not actually Indian device, I believe. It was some European instrument or something. I don't know. Anyway, so at least it looks like he gave 2 harmoniums, and is willing to sponsor Prabhupada's visa extension to attorney fee, and he was curious. Prabhupada is at least happy that Prabhupada can cover the philosophical aspects. He will continue to chant Hare Krishna. He will give up. Prabhupada asked him to give up smoking. I don't know if he did or not. Very nice. So we will end it here. Thank you so much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Prabhupada Lilamrita ki jai. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.